Today we're gonna be ranking the top 5 best weapons for invading in the Elden Ring DLC. Quick disclaimer, I rank these weapons based on their performance in invasions and invasions alone. I did not rank them based on their PvP and dual capabilities. Also, while I wouldn't recommend using this tier list for ganking invaders, it would make much more sense than using it for PvP. Before we take off, please note that I did not include Thiolier's Needle as I found it way too reliant on sleep darts and sleep pots. Besides that, the main thing that shines about that weapon is the weapon art, which I tried to avoid in this video. Either way, this is just my personal opinion and I wanna hear what you guys think down in the comments below. Your result with these weapons might differ, but I'm confident in my ranking here today. Now let's get on with the ranking and don't forget to like and subscribe. To start us off, at number 5 we got the Ancient Meteoric Ore Blade. Now I just want to say that putting this weapon at the bottom does not make it bad by any means. Just the fact that it made the ranking alone proves how useful and versatile it can be. The one implied thing that any Colossal Sword has going for it is its insanely high attack power and scaling. At higher rune levels this allows you to do absolutely nutty damage without even really trying. Even though it is part of the slowest weapon class in the game, the sheer damage output is enough to two-shot people through the R1 crouch poke combo. With the double B scaling in strength and arcane, this weapon can easily carry its own weight in the very clearly defined meta. Don't even get me started on the hyper armor you get while performing any attack. That's a very strong feature of Colossal Swords and it is certainly not to be underestimated. The weapon art is a dash that goes really far for a weapon this big and it staggers just enough for it to guarantee the follow-up as long as you press it immediately after the initial part of the Ash of War hits. A hit this guaranteed for a weapon with this much attack power is honestly really intimidating and it leads to one-shots more often than not. You can also use the skill as a roll catch and if it misses you can prevent an Estus recovery with a simple follow-up. A weird thing about it is that it requires 16 intelligence in order to be wielded properly, but it does not scale at all with int. It does get really good arcane scaling though for some reason. Strange, but it does not make the thing any weaker. All in all, the Ancient Meteoric Ore Blade is 100% a really good weapon for invading and probably the strongest Colossal Sword in the DLC. Moving on, at number 4 the Backhand blades make their appearance. Now I know the first thing you think about when I mention them is the two Ashes of War that are unique to them, Blind Spot and Swift Slash. Don't get me wrong, these skills are amazing, maybe even a bit too amazing even after the nerfs. So how come they're not even in the top 3? Well, when I made this ranking I tried my hardest to consider the Ash of War less and the weapon's moveset itself more. But knowing this, does it still hold up to its reputation? Are they still the spammy pieces of garbage that we all know and love? Well, I came to the conclusion that yes, they are still extremely solid and their unique moveset only does them a whole lot of justice. The first thing I noticed while using them is their very interesting running R1. After performing this move, unlike literally any other weapon in the game, you do not stop moving. You can keep pressing the sprint button and you will continue running like you did before even attacking. Besides this neat little feature that allows for great roll catching potential and sick mix-ups, the rest of the moveset is still really solid. The normal R1s come out fast and have a lot of front-loaded damage for the weapon this size. Also, an argument I've heard regarding the backhand blades caught my attention really fast. I heard people say that their heavy attack looks kinda like the Swift Slash Ash of War. And I can kinda see what players are on about, but I can't say I've ever been fooled by a mix-up like that. I also need to mention that their jumping attack is really good and it allows for a quick burst of damage while also being able to dodge incoming attacks. So the moveset is really good, right? But that's to be expected for a DLC weapon. Where these lovely pieces of work get all their renown is for the Blood Infusion. At 40 arcane, with a bleed infusion you can apply a staggering 102 bleed per hit. Sound broken yet? Well, just remember that even though they are basically two separate weapons, they don't apply any less status effects like two separate weapons that are being paired. Not to mention that Swift Slash is a 2-hit Ash of War. If you want a trusty weapon that you can hardly go wrong with during invasion, I would definitely recommend you the Backhand blades. But what could be better than front-loaded damage and bleed applied at twice the normal rate accompanied by invincibility frames? Range, an immense amount of range. Now it's time to talk about Messmer's Impaler. Coming in at number 3, this weapon has everything an invader would ever need. Damage, range, good moveset, incredible Ash of War, good roll catches, mix-ups thanks to the crouch R1 and so much more that I recommend trying out for yourself to get a taste of the strength of this very powerful invasion tool. Before I mention anything about the weapon itself, I need to mention that even though it has high stat requirements, it gets a really decent scaling in both Faith and especially Dexterity, a C and a B respectively. While using this Great Spear at about 70 Dex and 70 Faith, I got a little over 1000 attack power while two-handing. I know this is a huge rune level to go for, but you're not obligated to use it at that rune level by any means. On the contrary, Having stats scaling below A means that there are less diminishing returns for not investing a lot of points into stats. Moving on, the weapon primarily does fire damage, which is especially great because that means you can pair it with the Fire Scorpion charm, boosting your fire damage output by 12%, but taking a little bit more damage is a downside, if you can even call it a downside. Most of the invasions I've done were over in about 30 seconds. The base moveset is good, being a normal Great Spear, but where this beauty really shines is the Ash of War, comprised of 3 separate moves that have, in this order, a cone-shaped AoE, 3 piercing strikes, and a slam down with a 2-in-1 follow-up. The Ash of War covers most possible ganking scenarios that you need to thrive in. There isn't a single place where this skill does not come in handy. It can roll catch, it can out-trade, it has great AoE coverage, it can clean your dishes, do your homework, and the best part is you are never forced to commit to a set number of follow-ups. This minimizes the chances of you getting punished or even worse, backstabbed. And it lets you walk out of the situations where you should not have been able to not take a hit or just maybe a small punish. Worst case scenario, that being when the host does actually have a couple of brain cells, you're gonna have to mix up crouch attacks, lights and heavies to become unpredictable. The jumping heavy works as a great punish, especially if you have another great spear in your offhand. While being part of a weapon class that is generally considered a little bit more clunky, you bet that this weapon has enough tools to assure that you come out of that 3-on-1 gank victorious. Just barely missing out on the number 1 spot, we have a weapon that is so loved and hated at the same time by the community, I didn't even know if I should mention it at all. The Bloodfiend's arm. Now I get that this might be a bit surprising, and at first I wasn't just sure myself if I should put it this high up, but through vigorous testing I found out that this weapon is just a straight up demon. Its special property to apply more bleed when performing heavy attacks is top tier for arcane bleed builds. Now I know what you think, surely the weapon's consequence for this feat would be to make the weapon have a really telegraphed heavy attack. Well, let me tell you that you are wrong. It has one of the fastest and least predictable heavy attacks that I have ever seen. Just the sheer power of its charge attack, similar to the meat cleaver situation, would be enough to put it this high up. Even after the huge nerfs at 80 arcade, you get about 204 bleed application with blood infusion. After the recent changes, it can take more than 1 hit of any kind to apply a bleed, but it just changed it from being undeniably broken and unfun to just being a silly little one-shot stick with Royal Knight's Resolve and the Axe Talisman. This is truly a no-brainer if you want to farm some easy rune arcs. I especially love the fact that it can be buffed in so many ways, like the Lords of Blood Exaltation, the previously mentioned Axe Talisman, and the physic tier that boosts charge attacks. If you haven't tried it yet, you are definitely missing out. The normal moveset is by all means usable, and it has the important role of mixing up normal attacks in addition to the charged heavy attacks. If you just want to bonk people in the head and get rewarded for it, then the Bloodfiend's arm is for you. Some other viable Ashes of War besides Royal Knight's Resolve would be Savage Lion Claws for front-loaded damage and the special move that differs from your kit, or even better, Determination, which gives you a heavy boost in poise and allows you to ignore people attacking you, potentially setting you up for a slam dunk that will remain engraved in your enemy's mind. At C scaling in both strength and arcane, the regular attack power this weapon gets is no joke either. It bolsters jump and running attacks that deal significant damage and that are enough to drive people into panic rolling. With a bit of practice, you can roll catch players using the running light. Overall, an extremely solid weapon that deals an unexpected amount of damage. Before I show you what is arguably the best invasion weapon in the Elden Ring DLC, let us quickly go through some honorable mentions. The first honorable mention of today is the Lord version of the Greatsword of Radahn. Despite its great moveset that does a significant amount of damage with the right stats, this weapon has some core issues that unfortunately kicked it off today's list. First off would be the range. For how heavy and slow to use these paired Greatswords are, you would definitely want a compensation under the form of range. Unfortunately, you have to be pretty up close if you want your enemies to taste the sheer damage that this ornament can dish out. Furthermore, the Ash of War, being considered the superior one out of the two identical boss weapons, is lackluster for invading. It is unnecessarily telegraphed, has a slow startup which makes it predictable, does not travel really far, and can't even dish out that much damage. I was honestly pretty disappointed when I first tried PvP with them, and I see a lot of people think the same. I think they are in desperate need of a buff, and that they are anticlimactic for being the last possible obtainable weapons in the entire game. The second unfortunate weapon that did not make today's list are the Claws of Night. Don't get me wrong, for PvP and ganking this is by all means a superior weapon. It has its use, that's for sure, and it does its job well, but it was unfortunately left out of being a good invasion tool. After being used on me so many times, I figured the only rational thing to do would be to test it out for myself. I made the best possible build I could with 90 dexterity and got pretty much the same results everyone else did. It's an instant bleed weapon for sure, and it has so much more use on invaders rather than on the invaded. The main reason being, besides the Ash of War, which takes too long to cast anyways in tight situations, the weapon just kinda falls flat. The range is alright for the claws,
but the fact that it doesn't even stagger makes it not do that much damage. Even after you hit your Ash of War point blank, it's really easy for another fandom to quickly swoop in, while the initial dude that you hit gets to heal in safety. Simple R1s don't go a long way, while the jumping attacks are too similar to be able to do good mix-ups. The running attack is unfortunately not much better, since it's telegraph, needing to pull back your claws in order to be able to strike in front of you. Overall, this thing gives a really good weapon in the DLC for all purposes, except for invading. Moving on, the last honorable mention of this list will be the Dragon Hunter's Great Katana. I'm gonna be honest, this weapon doesn't have much going for it besides the fact that it just deals absolutely mental front-loaded damage. I have won invasions time and time again with this weapon simply by spamming out the running attack. On my build with 70 strength and 70 dexterity, I was comfortably doing well over 1000 damage on a single sprint attack to well-armored opponents. The moveset is relatively straightforward, not the best, not the worst, such as the fate of great katanas. Another part that can dominate is the jumping attacks. When mixed with running attacks, the jumping attacks can throw people off so bad it's actually crazy. Get yourself the Claw Talisman and you will dish out slow hits that hit like a truck. I have to say something about the unique Ash of War 2. And to be fair, it's just not that great. The uncharged version does negligible damage, not even enough to justify wearing the Shard of Alexander. And the charged version is quite predictable, being used most commonly for the potential high damage you can perform. Overall, if you really want to use this weapon, you can go right ahead, but don't expect to get too much out of it. Now for a long-awaited best weapon for invading as of making this video, I present to you the Greatsword of Damnation. I know you're not surprised, and you shouldn't be, because this beauty is literally made for PvP. There are incredibly few enemies the Ash of War actually works on, so using it for PvE would be completely counterintuitive. The weapon shines, it just does. Starting with the moveset, it gets the standard Claymore one, having a poke for the heavy attack and for the crouch attack. Just a high scaling and the moveset alone can set you up for ridiculous wins from my experience. It just goes to show what a simple yet effective moveset can achieve. The Ash of War is what we're all excited for though. I think it is one of the very few weapons in Souls games in general that is specifically designed for PvP. The initial leap of the skill makes you fly up into the air, giving you hyper armor before coming down and nabbing the nearest player, often out of iframes, to unleash a gory grab attack. The fact that it has decent range and it can also trade makes it the undoubted choice for the number 1 spot. With enough buffs, it did comfortably one-shot a host with 1.6k HP. Not only is it extremely efficient, but it is also literally fear-inducing. I cannot name you a single time where I have hit the Ash of War and the grabbed opponent didn't immediately start panic rolling. This allowed me to swoop in for the roll catch. It works great on open fields, in close quarters, and in every location you can think of. It demands a lot of respect from your opponents, and it certainly makes everyone keep a safe distance from you. Even if you miss the Ash of War completely, that is no problem at all. The follow-up that is delayed by default is a 360-degree cover that is unpredictable and sends enemies flying up into the air. The best weapon in Elden Ring is subjective and can vary depending on your playstyle, build, and the specific situations you encounter in the game. However, this weapon is frequently lauded for its versatility, power, and overall effectiveness. The Greatsword of Damnation wins, in my opinion, the title of the best weapon in the game for invading. Now, let me just wrap it all up. We looked at some exciting weapons today. Certainly all of these weapons are extremely fun to use, and even if this was a ranking system, you could enjoy using some lower scoring weapons more than others. Thank you guys for watching. I want you to know that these are just my personal opinions and I haven't looked at precise statistics yet. If you'd like me to make a video where I look at the weapons with the highest win rates, let me know in the comments down below. Also let me know if you agree with my list. Your input is very much appreciated. Alas, I thank you dearly for watching Tarnished, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.